Holy crap.
People persist in doubting the evidence.
Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free. You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
We're turning all of our antennas towards Jimmy Church on Dark Matter Radio.
And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church Fade to Black.
All right, bring it down, bring it down, bring it down. How you doing? My favorite night. Bring it down, bring it down. Fade to Black Friday. You gotta love it. Studio's dark. It's gonna be a great show tonight. This is Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Friday, May 30th, 143 days into the new year. Oh, yeah. Live from the JP Motorsports Studios right here in burning hot Burbank. This place almost burnt to the ground today. Lost the internet. Called Keith in a panic. Dude. But it's all good now. Live, Burbank, California for KJCR and the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Let's get this one cracking. Big proud salute to the men and women in uniform all around this world, fighting the good fight for us. Without them, there is no me, there is no you, there is no us, and you could not hear me right now. And I really want you to think about that for a second. That's why this show exists. That's why you can listen. Oh, man. We got a lot to do tonight. It's going to be a great show. Courtney Brown here in a little bit. Today, guitarist for Audioslave and Rage Against the Machine, a guy who went to Harvard, gave it all up to play guitar, and he can sling, by the way. Tom Morello, 50 years old. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. You know what to do. Everything's Fade to Black, Jimmy Church Radio, J Church Radio, KJCR. Go follow, like, subscribe, do whatever you'd like to do. Just take a quick glance over into the tweet box. Yeah, okay. It looks like all the normal. Yeah, we're all here. It's all good. Even TalkStream Live is putting up that phone number. All right. 716-748-0111. But the bottom line is, they can hear me right now. Why would I say that number? Because they're already listening, right? Am I right? I think so. All right. Let's go. Let's get it cracking. Tonight, email throughout the show, jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. You can also do it on the website, on our non-NSA specially encrypted servers. If you want to do it in confidence and pierce the veil of the producers, you know what to do. And also tonight we will be giving away another pass to the desert. And I want everybody, if you haven't yet, go and do it. I'm serious. Contact in the Desert. We're going to be there. Jimmy Church, the team, the crew. We're going to broadcast live August 8th. I'm going to run this in the ground because it is a good time. But go and register right now. Giving away another pass tonight. All right? $400 4-day pass to Contact in the Desert. Everybody's going to be there. When I say everybody, that includes us. I'm serious. Come hang out. You win a pass. You go to Contact in the Desert. You're coming on this show with us. You're going to come hang out with Dolan and Wilcock and Greer and Van Daniken, Tsoukalos and that hair. Seriously. who is going to be walking around there. It's going to be awesome. Okay, so we're going to broadcast live Friday night, August 8th, and it's going to be a great time. So do get over to jimmychurchradio.com, get that registration done, win yourself a pass. It's going to be great. All right, so with that, we've got a lot to get to tonight. Tomorrow night, by the way, we had on last week Steve Allen, the Stephenville Lights witness to the incident in Texas. Tomorrow night, he's going to be at the Ciro International event at the Veterans Memorial Complex, 4117 Overland Avenue, Culver City. I am going to be there. All right? So if you want to come hang out, go check it out. It will be tomorrow night. I think it's at 7 o'clock. You can go to the Ciro website and check it out. But I think it's at 7. But come hang out with Steve. He'll be there. I'll be there. I'm probably going to do a drive-by, take a quick picture, and have a drink, say hi to everybody, and it's going to be cool. So please come hang out. That's where I will be tomorrow night. Let me get to some quick email. A bunch came in last night. I do want to say thank you to Blake Cousins and Dr. J. Andy. I like that. J. Andy instead of J. Allen. That was pretty cool. That was a good show last night. And Blake, he's an elusive guy. He's doing his thing. He's busy. But for him to come out and do something like this was a great time. And I hope everybody enjoyed that last night. Had a lot of email about it and some other stuff. So let's bang through this. I've lined up a bunch of stuff here really quick. Let's see. First up, Kevin O'Quinn wrote, this was about the Led Zeppelin Stairway to Heaven lawsuit that's going down right now for writing credit. It's a heartbreaker, but he wrote, I listened to the song in question. That's the song from Spirit. And other than the half-step walk-downs, I see no infringement. To be honest, I just don't think they have enough evidence. Zepp songs walks up the neck, so to speak, instead of down the neck, as this song does. The eeriness of the keys don't even sound the same to me. That's from Kevin. But, Kevin, you're a songsmith. Okay, you're a player. I'm a player. That's not how they settle these kinds of cases. They literally will grab somebody off the street, put them on the stand. They don't want an expert, and that's how it's going to go down. It only has to sound similar. That's it. And it's going to be crazy. I could be wrong, but I feel really weird about this. I really do. Stairway to Heaven. Man, that is a heartbreaker. I got to back up. Oh, no. I got to move forward. Sorry about that. Next email. This is from Maurice. When I was listening to you talking to the doctor on Thursday night's show about the underwater base and going down with cameras to investigate, a thought struck me. You had mentioned before on the show about, quote, don't be surprised if this disappears off Google Maps, end quote. Well, I think it's too late for TPTB to do anything now because it's out there and it's in the public domain and it would be too obvious. However, they do have time to disguise this thing underwater to make it look like a natural formation if an ROV comes snooping along. This is just my feeling on it. What do you think? Yep, I agree. Now, what's really weird is something has been going on with Google Earth intermittently, and I don't know what it is because we've had dozens of emails come in this week from people reporting that it's gone. It's back. It's gone. Something's wrong. I can't see it. It was there, but now it's gone. It's really weird. I haven't caught it down. I've only caught it up. But if you do find that you head out to Wainimi and peer along the coast and something disappears, let us know. I would love to get a screenshot, and so would Dale and Maxwell, of that not being there. Probably the first would find it would be Lou Sheehan. How you doing, Lou? Okay, email from Dino. Is this media blackout on UFO, exopolitical, EBE, and other phenomena, happenings and sightings a matter of control and censorship from persons who own the particular media outlet or just the reporting staff of the media source? Is this a direct block or just a reputation of the reporting person issue? That is actually a great question. And what does this portend for the full disclosure push currently underway via Stephen Bassett and the Paradigm Research Group? Again, from Dino. That is a great question. We addressed this somewhat last night. You know, today it's media, it's news, it's media by committee. And if somebody in Washington wants something out there, that press release goes to everybody across the country, and they literally will read word for word. They won't change one thing. It doesn't matter if it's Fox, CNN, MSNBC, your local news, something independent. It doesn't matter. I watch this all the time. When there's a breaking story, I will listen to the first words off of somebody, and I'll start banging channels. I'll start bouncing around the internet and find that everybody, no matter who it is, will say the same exact words. So when it comes to something like this, it could be somewhat the reporter not wanting to hang out there, let it out. But more than likely, it's the media in general, whoever owns the station. It's media by committee. All right. Got another email from Warren about Malibu. And he said that the base looks like a TVA. And for anybody that doesn't know, TVA is the Tennessee Valley Authority. Looks like a dam generator. Oh, you know, a dam for a lake or a river. He said it's all there. The turbines, the exit, the entrance. And I thought that was really interesting. And I think that will take us all back to take a second look. I thought that was really interesting. And apparently, I keep saying point when it's wrong. It's Wyneme. So it goes. Years ago, I was with somebody out there, and they said, you know, hey, man, there's a point Wyneme. And it just stuck, man. It's impregnated. It's burned into my lobes, and I can't shake it. So hopefully I'm a Wyneme guy from here on out. I'm almost tired of hearing about it, actually. So maybe that'll scare me straight. There was a Facebook post right before. What happened to it? Okay, I don't have it here. Maybe I'll go back and I'll catch it off of the break. Oh, here it is. This right before the show, Carissa Bordner posted on Facebook. She said, Jimmy, after watching the remote viewing session on the underwater base, what do you think about it being a naval project for training marine life? And she's talking about the remote viewing video by Edward Riordan. And we talked about that last night. I will talk about this with Courtney when he comes on here at the bottom of the hour. I watched the entire video last night. And remote viewing is a fascinating, that's trippy. And when you go and you watch Ed's video, and you see how the target is exposed at the end, and they open up the what was really cool, and I'm sure that Dale caught it. Dale and I didn't talk about it today, but they pop open that envelope, and there's Dale's images right there. The fade to black images were the ones in the envelope, and you go back and you watch that entire video, and what he did, that's a head scratcher. Because what was in that envelope wasn't a go-kart, a mini bike, a jet, an earthquake, just the moon, whatever you can think of. It wasn't a person. And I don't want to disclose. I want everybody to go watch Ed's video. We have it up on Fade to Black, so you can go over to the homepage, scroll down. It's right there. There's no church rants, no galleries tonight. It's all good. Got a call coming in right now. Do we have the time before the break? All right, I'll just grab this right now. Here we go. All right, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling? Where are you calling from?
This is Edward Riordan. I'm in Austin, Texas.
Hey, Ed. Wow, that was kind of weird timing.
I'm listening to your show.
All right. Well, listen, Ed, before we bring Courtney on, he's going to be on in 15 minutes. I'll tell you what, and thank you for calling in. Can you give me like 2 or 3 minutes and let me ask you a couple of quick questions about the video?
Sure.
I watched the entire thing last night, and what I was fascinated about and what I just said, and again, thank you for calling in. What was disclosed, the target in the envelope at the end was not a car, it wasn't a plane, it wasn't the moon, it wasn't Mars. It was an underwater anomaly off the coast of Malibu. And as I watched you do your viewing last night, I was sitting there, my heart started to pound. I was watching and I thought, man, he's onto something. And so with that, I'm going to throw it out to you. And I watched listened to your description last night. But how big was it, and how big was the room, and what was your feeling when you saw the photographs at the end? Were you like, wow, I was pretty darned close?
Yeah, I was very happy with the session. As far as my perceptions of the location, the front part was big, and I tried to capture the dimensionality of it in my sketches as best as I could. As far as the front part, and then but the cave or tunnel or shaft or whatever part, my perception of that was kind of small, and I tried to render that in my sketches to show that there was kind of this thin tunnel going back. Now, as far as how big it would be, my perception of it was that it felt tight to me if I was moving through it, with the front part being very large, and then the area in the back that seemed kind of pool-like to me was I felt like I was in a cavern of some kind, like a cave, like a cavern,
Yeah, and there was
some kind of biological life back there.
Yeah, and you made a couple of comments. Let's talk about that for really quickly for a second. You sounded like either concerned or that because you brought up human. You said the word human, I believe, or human-like entity, but you wanted to make it very clear that although there was life back there, it could have been anything, and you were leaning on maybe algae or some other type of plant growth. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I mean, basically, when I moved into that part of the session, I was perceiving this biological life, and so typically in a session, if I come upon that, then I want to interrogate the life form and see what perceptions come through. And but as I was attempting to question it or interrogate it or find out about it, I wasn't getting any real feedback from it. So I had to kind of shift my line of questioning around to kind of third party. What could describe this to me? But what really kind of struck me perceptually about it was that it was very delicate. Like a very, and I didn't say pristine, but my perception of it was, as I described, it was a very delicate kind of area that didn't really get accessed very much.
Yeah, when you say, you said delicate in the video probably 4 or 5 times, and now you're saying it again here. I've got a couple of other questions, but really quick. What do you mean? You're trying to drive this delicate home. What do you mean by that? Fragile?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when a perception like that comes through, I have to do my best to choose the words that describe it the best, because I'm trying to describe a perception and try to fit it into these words. And so delicate was a word that I had to choose for it, in that it seemed very gentle, fragile, like a delicate ecosystem, and where you don't want to just go in there and start messing things around. It's a very pristine kind of, like I was kind of perceiving, not access. It was just an area where it was just these life forms, and something was coming down from the ceiling, and it hadn't really been touched. That kind of delicate. It hadn't been contaminated, really. Kind of. I mean, I'm choosing different words now to try to describe it better to you.
Yeah.
But like something that really hadn't been contaminated. That kind of delicate,
Wow. And okay, now let's try to get as much in as we can. There goes the news and commercials and everything else. I didn't plan. Your call just caught me off guard. So I do have a bunch of questions. Let's try to get as much in as we can before Courtney. First question is this: you started to in the viewing, you were alluding to a window or something transparent, and I obviously look at that as it could be anything. It could have been maybe something protecting the door, something hiding the door. Maybe camouflage, but also maybe water. And I thought that you might end up going there. What were you feeling when you kept saying, something transparent that you had to go through?
Well, I was doing my best to describe a perception. And so what was coming into my mind as I was trying to describe this strange thing to me was, and that's why I like at the end, I was getting into this kind of reference of an eyeball, and how you have the front part and light frequencies come through it, and it goes through the ganglia of the eye, and then it goes back into the brain. And that was the dynamic of it. There was something in the front where light could come in, and then there was this long thing, and then there was this opening or where it attached in the back. And so I was doing my best to try to describe it. And so the lens, or like the pane, or it was something in the front, and I was trying to describe it as best as I could. But it was hard to describe because, like you say, there's water. Maybe there were some elements of the water. Typically, when I remote view, I don't remote view the feedback photo. I remote view the site. But if I look at the feedback photo and it's so kind of blurry looking, it's almost like a strange looking hologram or something like that. And so I was trying to describe that as best as I could. I couldn't say if it's some kind of shield or anything. I couldn't really say, I was just trying my best to describe that there was this opening in the front.
Oh, it was Ed.
Ed,
it was shocking to watch. Okay, and like I said, I don't know how you when everything was done at the end, and you opened up that envelope and you saw the first images. Did you? Was it an aha moment? Yeah, that's kind of where I was going. Is that? I want to know your sensation. What did you feel at the end when you saw the images for the first time?
Yeah, it made the session made sense to me when I got the feedback photo that I was dealing with some type of an entrance.
Now, also to be totally clear for everybody listening around the world right now, you knew absolutely nothing. They're just telling you got a target, and you run from there, right? I just want to be clear.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I had no prior information at all about what the target was. I was totally blind to it.
Totally shocking. It's unbelievable. Now, it is. I watched it. Somebody had made me aware of the video 2 nights ago, and I went, and I was like the 6th person, right, to watch. And and then I watched it a second time, and it made my hair stand up. I mean, it was pretty cool, man. Now, next, did you have any vibe on location on planet Earth? Obviously, now it's Malibu, but did you have any visions of where this actually was?
No, not really. I didn't really go into that. As far as the session goes, I didn't really do any. It's called a movement when you want to explore some other aspect of the target, and you see it in the video. If I'm asking questions or something like that, they're called movements. But I didn't really. I didn't do any kind of movements to get that kind of information.
Right.
I was focusing on some specific things. And that's something that, had we done a movement, okay, let's go to let's try to find out where this is. Let's find the nearest recognizable landmark or something like that, or let's try to find this on the map or something like that. We didn't do anything like that. So I didn't really focus on it, to tell you the truth.
Okay, that's fine. And what about, did you feel wet? You know what I mean? Did you have any underwater? Did you have any underwater vibe at all?
Well, I mean, as far as there were some perceptions that were coming through, moldy in the pool in the back and that kind of thing, and something was coming down from the ceiling. So, I mean, it was gooey like that to me, But as far as, am I in the middle of the ocean or anything like that? I really wasn't, once I locked on to there's an entrance here, I just couldn't get away from that, so the rest of the stuff, it really didn't seem important to me. What was really important to me was that there's an entrance and there's a thing going through and there's something in the back, and, that's what was really interesting to me. And typically in remote viewing, and you see it in my other videos, is that if there's something interesting to me at the target, I'll really dig into it and want to get into it as much as I can. Once a perception comes in and I can feel it, and I know there's a perception here now, and I'm going to do my best to describe it exactly as it's presenting itself. I'm just kind of on autopilot.
I have to say,
I'm completely so focused that there's certain things don't become too relevant to me.
Well, and there's one other thing that happens in the video, and then I'm going to have to let you go. Oh, I do want to, if you want, you should head over to the Twitter chat room and hang out with everybody, because I know that they have a million questions. And also in the chat room is Dale, Dale Romero, the co-discoverer of this, with us here, and he's in the chat room now. And those are his images that you looked at when you opened up the envelope. So I'm sure that there's a lot of people over there that would have a lot of questions for you if you want to go hang out. But really quick, before I let you go, is this a gift? Is this something that you had when you were a kid? Were you able to know what your Christmas gifts were, what you were getting for your birthday? And I'm not making light of it. I'm being serious. I mean, is this a gift, or is this something that you were, trained to, how did this happen? And we've got about a minute left.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll quickly, but I've always been interested in extrasensory perception and that kind of thing since I was a kid. But to answer your question, anybody could learn how to do remote viewing. But I think that there are some who have a natural talent. It's kind of like if anybody can play the guitar, but not everyone's going to be, Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of thing.
Right.
I think that I have some natural talent, and I explore it with remote viewing. But I also see remote viewing as it's like an art form, And so I approach it as an art form, or as a form of self-expression, to allow myself to go into it deeper. So I think that there's, for anyone to really get successful at remote viewing, I believe it's a combination of training and natural talent.
I got to thank you for coming on the show, and please let's stay in touch. I would love to get you back on and get a little bit deeper on this. Surprise call.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, hey, surprise call. You caught me literally unprepared, but well, sort of. I watched the video twice, so but Ed, thank you, and again, I would love to have you back on the show.
Thank you so much, and I'll be listening for Courtney.
Yeah, he's coming on as soon as I hang up. I'll talk to you.
Oh, great.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, Ed.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, let's get straight to it. Oh, man, we've got to keep this cracking. Thank you, Ed. That was a surprise call. It sounded like I set that up, but I didn't. That was bizarre. You got to love this show. This is Fade to Black, the Friday edition. When we come back, Courtney Brown. Back right after this. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Dark matter.
Dark Matter, Dark Matter, Dark Matter, Dark Matter.
You're listening to Fade to Black
on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back. What a way to end a great week on this show, on the radio. Dark Matter Radio Network. This is Fade to Black. Wow, Ed Riordan, surprise call. That was amazing. Last night, Blake Cousins, Dr. Andy J. Tonight, Courtney Brown. What a week it has really been. Next week, Dr. Stephen Greer. We have Alejandro Rojas coming in. Joe Buckman at the end of the week. It is going to be an amazing week next week, too, as well. So let's get to it. Let's get it cracking. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Email Jimmy@JimmyChurchRadio.com. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Courtney Brown is a mathematician and a social scientist who teaches in the Department of Political Science at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. Independent of his work at the university, he is also the leading scholar on the subject of remote viewing, as it is done using procedures that were developed by the United States military and used for espionage purposes, or procedures that are derivative of those methodologies. Brown received his PhD degree from Washington University, St. Louis in 1982 in political science with an emphasis on mathematical modeling. He began his teaching career as a college calculus instructor in Africa before moving on to teach nonlinear differential and difference equation modeling in the social sciences at the University of California, Los Angeles, Emory University, and the Inter-University Consortium, University of Michigan. Oh, that was a mouthful. Dr. Brown is the director and founder of the Farsight Institute. That's farsight.org, a nonprofit research and educational institute. Woo, man, Dr. Courtney Brown, I got to say, welcome to the show. And that was a mouthful.
Well, Jimmy, thanks.
Getting through that just goes to show you, Sometimes I get a little intimidated. But, Doctor, thank you and welcome to the show. Welcome to Fade to Black. We've got a lot to go over tonight. If you don't mind, can it be Courtney from here on out?
Yeah, please. Make it permanent forever. I don't even have my students at Emory call me professor or doctor. You know, those titles are nice for people to know your background, but what they do is they produce barriers for communication. And a lot of professors like them because they produce that hierarchical structure in interacting with people, and professors have a lot of their ego tied up in having that worship, that type of, you know, I'm a professor, because I have a PhD, I'm a professor, you know, I'm the smart guy and you're the person getting information from me. But, you know, that is really, given the amount of crappy stuff that's actually taught worldwide in universities, that barrier actually stops the educational process because it really prohibits students from fighting back for, interacting intellectually with the professors in a way that makes a productive learning environment possible. If you look at people like Socrates, he, completely didn't deal with the worship item of saying, I'm the guy that you're supposed to learn from. He stayed down at the marketplace and just asked questions of people and tried to elicit responses. And they get really ticked off at him and eventually asked him to bite the bullet or leave.
Right.
The point is that, he wasn't interested in him sort of being at the top and having that hierarchical structure and saying, worship me, I have the knowledge, and you tell me I'm a good guy by calling me fancy titles. He was interested in interactive intellectual exchange as a means of upward mobility in terms of thinking. And a lot of people react strongly to that. Both the audience likes the worship arrangement. It's like a rock concert. You like the rock stars to be up on stage, and the audience likes being in the audience and sort of that hierarchical structure. So students like actually going to the professor and saying, Professor so-and-so, give me wisdom and then give me an A so that you can announce that I am also a good person. But that really completely destroys the learning process. The learning process isn't that way. It's really interactive. And the best professors are ones, in my view, that eschew the title and cause controversy, because they're the ones who cause active engagement with the subject matter in a way that really turns students into live wires. But that's, that's just
but you can kind of look at that two different ways. One is if a student is going to say professor or doctor voluntarily out of respect, then it's earned, and that's the way it should be. But I had, it's only happened one time. We were getting ready to have a guest on the show, and it was about a week before the show, and we're talking on the phone, like with all the guests. And I happened to say it. Now, after the introduction, would you like me to continue with doctor, or can I say something, And he said, oh, absolutely not. It's always doctor. And I went, oh, really? Yeah. Is that where we are going? Now, that guest, for one reason or another, didn't come on the show. So I can honestly say it wasn't a past guest. And who was it? Well, okay, so there you go. But I was a little taken aback by that. I really was. And I feel the exact same way. Because if people are really confident with themselves intellectually and as people, they don't need the titles to support themselves. They're okay just talking. And the people who rely, in my opinion, on those titles are the ones who really are the weakest intellectually, because they're the ones saying, I need this infrastructure so that you won't attack me. Right. And my title is doofus, and I'm cool with that.
Actually, this was actually used politically for the longest time. It wasn't until the Vietnam War that the title of President of the United States was used to convey tremendous amount of authority simply by invoking the title. For example, during the Truman and Eisenhower administrations, there were numbers of times where members of Congress were recorded as saying during testimonies, yes, well, this information comes from the President of the United States, and you wouldn't challenge that, would you? And the audience was silent. You know, as long as it came from the President's mouth, they didn't challenge it. So now there, of course, always have been challengers out there, like Huey Long was a great challenger of absolutely everybody. But the point is that a lot of the members of the audience actually really like these titles. They like sort of feeling that they, even in the political realm, have a reality around themselves that's somewhat fixed, and that they can avoid the engagement with difficult questions simply by relying on some type of intellectual or emotional concept of authority.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that really is equivalent to death, in my opinion.
Well, I had a run, it was probably about 3 months ago, and I'm not kidding, Courtney. I had a run of about 12 guests in a row over a couple of week period. Everyone was a PhD. And I got to tell you, it started to wear me down. It was just like, man, you know, it's not intimidation. It's just information coming at you. Yeah. And it got to be, I couldn't wait to book somebody that didn't have a doctorate. I didn't care who it was. Just bring me on somebody where we can just kick back. But most of it, it's always comfortable. It's always great. And I think that most people that go and pursue a whole lot of education, they do it because they want to learn. They don't do it because they want to intimidate. You know, they want to learn, and then they want to turn around and share that information. And that's the best part of having somebody on that's, you know, got 12 years of school behind them, because they've been there. They've been to the places I haven't seen. They've read the stuff that I've always wanted to read, and then you just milk them. You know,
but you know, there's always going to be people who are willing to engage in a productive manner. By the very nature of your show, the very fact that you have a show, the PhDs that are going to be likely drawn to participate in your show are going to be those who want to more actively engage, and so you will get the best of the best. But you know, there's the 99%.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We just had a router crash with the internet. We are still live with Courtney. Courtney, you with us?
I'm here.
Okay, let's. It's weird. We had we're in the middle of a heat wave, and about an hour before the show today, we lost routers and the internet, and it just happened again. But it is what it is, and I'm looking. We have full bandwidth, full signal strength, which is what happened earlier, too. Everything kind of slowed down, and then, boom, we lost it. But now we are ripping. So there you go. All right, so I've reset everything. We are back up and running. Let's get to a couple of things really quick. I want to set the stage for your video that I've been watching, and also I would like to talk about Ed and what he has and his video too as well that he put up on the internet. And I know that you probably had a chance to watch that yourself too. So let's go back a little bit. Let's actually, for the half of the audience out there that doesn't know about remote viewing, let's get a basic description of what it is. And then I want to kind of move into Stargate a little bit, and then as quick as we can, we'll just go to the present day. But,
sure.
Okay, so remote viewing, what is it?
Okay.
And can anybody do it? So let's start there.
It's a natural ability of living. You can't exist without having that ability. However, remote viewing is a mental procedure that's used to transfer information, perceptual information, across time and space, in complete violation of the traditionally accepted laws of physics, which includes both quantum and relativistic physics. Classical, of course, going back to Newton, but also Einsteinian relativistic physics. So you're taking perceptual information and transferring it across any level of distance and time and space instantly. So from the past, present, future, so on. And for those people who are saying, well, that's just bogus, it's a superstitious religion type of a thing, do understand that the major paradigms of physics are 100 years old. They have not been revised at all for 100 years. Now, there have been improvements in technical details. We've got more refinements. I'm a mathematician, so I can appreciate the way the calculations are done now for quantum mechanics. We do quantum mechanical computing. We do quantum computing now. So we have applications working with this stuff. The calculations are better. So that is fine. And relativistic stuff, we have that down to the nth decimal point. But those are just refinements in basic paradigms. The basic paradigms haven't changed at all for 100 years. So that tells you automatically that we're in for a revision. So there's a lot of things that we now know happen that cannot be accounted for and with those basic paradigms of traditional physics as it's taught commonly in the universities. And the only way that you can continue to defend those paradigms as the end of the story is by adamantly refusing to look at the data that contradict those theories. So in reality, both our understanding of quantum as well as relativistic physics is limited within a box of reality, under certain sets of conditions, under certain circumstances, within a subset of a larger reality. They work, but the experimental data that is then now completely rules out the idea that those are the end of the story. So that is not where the university teaching is at right now. They stop at the paradigms that go back 100 years. So the new stuff is stuff like what you're having me talk about here, which Jimmy tells you a little bit about the value of what you're doing here, because you're way ahead of the curve in terms of the dominant share of everything that's taught at university levels and mainstream anywhere. So this is not just an entertainment show. This is a huge effort to help change the planet, to more modernize the planet, to a level of understanding that will enable the entire species to move forward. So both your listeners listening to you and you actually going to the trouble of organizing shows like this is not a small deal. Everyone should understand that you can't get this information on the mainstream for good, solid reasons. And if you go out 20, 25 years, you will get it on the mainstream. But we won't get to that 20 or 25 years unless people like you, Jimmy, actually are doing your stuff. So you're paving the way for what's going to happen. So that is a perceptual transfer of information, and physicists really worry about that because they know that information is no different than energy or mass. E equals mc squared. C squared, speed of light squared, is just a constant. So energy equals a mass. So when you're talking about transferring information, you're talking about transferring energy, which is equivalent to transferring mass across time and space. Now, information, physicists have long known, it was originally a thought experiment, but they now know that it's way beyond a thought experiment. It's been confirmed in laboratory settings that information is, in fact, exactly the same as energy. It was originally thought of by people like Norbert Wiener and Claude Shannon, circa 1948, but it's been confirmed in laboratory experiments. You see, normally you and I think about information as just something that we know. We know something, and that's it. But that's not what information is. Information is anything that's organized, and it's to be different from, say, randomness. So if you have, say, particles in an isolated system, in a laboratory setting where everything's walled off, and they're organized in a certain way, like in a checkerboard pattern or anything. If you have any type of organization of anything, well, there's information in that. That's different from randomness. And physicists now know that when information is destroyed, when the randomness takes over and the organization of anything is destroyed, energy is released. That means information is energy, because when you destroy the information, you release the energy, and it's measurable, like on meters. And so if you have information that's being transferred across time and space by perceiving things, well, you're transferring energy. E equals mc squared,
right?
Same as transferring mass.
Right.
So you're really talking about a fundamental change in understanding anything. So these remote viewing, we call it remote viewing because it's a terminology that's been around for a while, but it was specifically applied to procedures that were developed developed and employed by the United States military and used for espionage purposes in the 1980s and 1990s. Their official program ended, the remote viewing program, in 1995, November, but everyone who I know and respect, absolutely understands that they started the project up right away. Again, a new project, and it's black, and so if and when that ever becomes public, they'll close that one down immediately and say some rogue general did that and don't know how it happened, and they'll start up another one.
Right.
So,
well, it's their job to keep it secret. I mean,
that's what they do.
Yeah,
that's what
exactly.
They do. We govern ourselves by secrecy, whether it's congressional hearings, presidential meetings, whether it's the Federal Reserve Board talking about interest rates. Everything's done behind closed doors. Everything significant is done behind closed doors. Anything that's not significant, that's for a public show, they'll put on camera. But we govern ourselves by secrecy. And if you look at the WikiLeaks thing and the Snowden things, information coming out that's sort of leaked out causes a big response. Whether it's really damaging or not, the government doesn't like that. Why doesn't it like that? Because its power is maintained through the monopoly of that information release. And so, when we're talking about the transferring of information across time and space, we're talking about information that's being transferred without asking for permission. So we're talking about a fundamental change in the way we govern ourselves eventually, which is to move away from governance by secrecy. So we're talking about a change not just in the understanding of physics and extending that to the discoveries we've made, which is the history of humanity, but also we're talking about the fundamental changes in the way we govern ourselves to be in what I would consider to be a better way to think of our future evolutionary track. But nonetheless, we're talking about something that's really, really major, transferring information. That means remote viewers using these military or military-derived procedures are getting...
All right, Courtney, we're back. I want to, this is Fade to Black, Dark Matter Radio Network. It's Friday night. We're speaking with Courtney Brown, Dr. Courtney Brown. And what I wanted to kind of jump into really quick, because you talk about this enough, that your methodology for remote viewing is exactly what the CIA and the Department of Defense and military applications. Can you explain that for me really quick and what that means and why that is important?
Yeah, we use procedures at the Institute that have been developed by the United States military, or procedures that are derivative of those methodologies. And the two primary ones that are used in our experiments are the CRV methodology, that stands for Controlled Remote Viewing, taught by luminaries like Lynn Buchanan, Paul Smith, and so on. And the CRV methodology goes back intellectually, is tied to Ingo Swann, the late Ingo Swann. And the other methodology that we use is the HRVG, or Hawaii Remote Viewers Guild procedures, that was taught by Glenn Wheaton, who came out of Special Forces Intelligence. And he taught a group of people out in Hawaii how to use those set of procedures. And those set of procedures are intellectually tied back to a man named Dr. Richard Ireland. So we have Ingo Swann and Dr. Richard Ireland, two separate sort of approaches. Now, the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, that had the official program, that was the one that was involved with the CRV methodology. The Hawaii Remote Viewers Guild procedures came out of something that was unofficial. It was essentially an underground movement within the military that was later known as the 1st Earth Battalion, and was featured in the movie Men Who Stare at Goats, starring Jeff Bridges and George Clooney. So that 1st Earth Battalion approach was a different way of going at it, but it still involved paper and pen sessions to remote view that typically had about 20 pages in them and took about an hour to do per time. And the military is involved with a lot of other stuff. However, in terms of applications of remote viewing, however, it's important to remember that the Farsight Institute is totally civilian. And so we are, the former military guys like Glenn Wheaton and Lynn Buchanan have been members of our board of directors, but the people who do our remote viewing are totally civilian. The probably two best remote viewers on the planet Earth right now are Dick Allgeier and Daz Smith. Daz Smith is British, and he lives in Britain, of course, and he uses the CRV methodology. And Dick Allgeier is a former, just recently retired celebrity newscaster in Hawaii, and he uses the HRVG methodology. And so those two guys are sort of the ones that have been involved in many of our projects dating back many years, as well as many others who have come out of those two realms. But they have been the ones who worked on the latest project, the Great Pyramid of Giza. And Dick Allgeier and Deborah Duggan-Takagi, another remote viewer, a female that came out of the Hawaii Remote Viewers Guild, were the two remote viewers who worked on a project before that dealing with an underwater anomaly that we called the Atlantis, the True Story, and that was a separate project. So we have been involved in studying underwater anomalies, like you're interested with this thing that you're working on now off of Malibu, and as well as with Ed Riordan. And our latest project is the Great Pyramid of Giza, using remote viewing data from Dick Allgeier and Daz Smith. So, that's the sort of the military history behind it, but we're not military, we're civilian.
Now, is there one preference, over the others between CRV and HRVG, or, like what you did in the video, you used both, and it was a combination of the both. So, how do you look at it? There is
no preference. There's no one's not better than the other.
Okay.
It's just a different style of gathering this information. And some people like one approach better than the other, and they sort of fall into that approach as being the one that they like. We also have another approach called scientific remote viewing, or SRV, and that is something that the basic version of that is available at our website, www.farsight.org, Farsight, like seeing far.org, O-R-G, because we're a nonprofit, in the SRV link on the nav bar. And there's a 18-hour, 24-lesson course that's hosted by YouTube, plus a printable text, and all of which is free. And so it's possible for people, and almost everybody who starts in remote viewing starts with that course. In fact, the SRV course, and then if they want to do more, they end up getting into CRV or HRVG approaches and so on.
Well,
we have also advanced SRV, but there is a number of approaches, but ultimately, the origin of these things start back with the military and the Stanford Research Institute projects that were done back in the later parts of the last century. But right now, everything that we do is civilian, and we are literally the leading hub for all of these new projects, science projects as well as applications, for using these full-blown projects where all the data are shown to the public, where people can get all this information, all the paper and pen sessions freely available to everybody, and we have and that's my job, to help present some of this stuff. A lot of people think that I am the Farsight Institute because they see me so much, but reality is I'm just the front man. Like Bono is the front man for U2, and John Bon Jovi is the front man for the band Bon Jovi, and Steven Tyler is the front man for Aerosmith. Well, I'm the front man for the Farsight Institute. I'm the guy who explains what we do. But I am not the Institute. I am just one guy. And in fact, I may be the director of the Institute, but we have a board of directors, and I have been voted down sometimes by the board. So, it's not just me.
Well, in watching Ed's, the thing is this, first off, the pyramid, the Great Pyramid of Giza video was absolutely amazing. And what I liked about it was, for me, I like information. I like numbers. I like facts. I like stuff to come at me like that, and I absorb it like a sponge. And that's exactly what that video was. So it was kind of tailor-made for me. But backing up a step, with Ed's viewing of this anomaly that we have found off of the Malibu coast. The reason why it made me, made my heart pound was I knew what he was viewing, right? I knew what was in the package. And watching him, slowly work towards this and his methodology with it, it freaked me out. Now, do you still get freaked out? Do you still go, man? No. Okay.
Yeah, my eyebrows still raise, and I still say, wow, but I'm not freaked out anymore. But the latest, actually, in our Atlantis, we use the word Atlantis just to convey the idea of a technologically advanced civilization that destroyed itself in our ancient past. So, which is not so ancient. It was 70,000 years ago. So we use that word not necessarily because we want to invoke any type of the Atlantean mythology and legends. We use it because it brings to mind immediately the idea of an ancient technologically advanced society that killed itself. So it's just a convenience. But we looked at a project. We have a project. There's a DVD and also a video online for the full documentary, where you can actually see live remote viewing being done on it, where we studied two anomalies, one off 1,000 miles west of the coast of Morocco and Portugal, and 3 miles deep, which was clearly the ruins of an ancient city as far as the remote viewing data are concerned, and that's what it looks like on the ocean floor with really good Google Earth imagery. And then also anomalies that were found on the bottom of the ocean down near Antarctica. And so when you talk about this new anomaly that's off the coast of Malibu, really all that does is fit into the developing picture of a technologically advanced society that was huge, worldwide, global, and it went belly up. And we're starting to discover lots of evidences of that stuff. And your Malibu anomaly seems to be, based on what it looks like, something comparable to or connected with the stuff that we've investigated previously in that project that we have called the Atlantis, The True Story. And you can actually see parts of the documentary, actually a good 15 minutes of the documentary, right on their website. And it's farsight.org. Just click on the nav bar where it says Atlantis. Actually, you can see it also just by looking at the banner for the Farsight Institute, for the Atlantis stuff, which is right on our homepage, right under the banner for the Great Pyramid of Giza. So, the really interesting thing about both the Atlantis thing as well as the Great Pyramid of Giza is that we changed the way we did remote viewing. The military approach to remote viewing had always been pen and paper. People write on pen and paper. And we found that to be tremendously useful for the developing and understanding what was going on with remote viewing. But in terms of conveying what's happening to people, it just didn't work. It went belly up. It was just not persuasive because people don't want to look at pieces of paper. So we really had to look ourselves in the mirror and say we're going to have to depart from the way that the military people develop their remote viewing procedures if we're hoping to change the planet, the way people think about remote viewing.
Right.
And if we're going to do that, we're going to have to look at different ways that are more persuasive, just presentationally. So,
well, when you say persuasive, I don't want to use this word, but I have to. Almost like entertaining, to keep attention spans there. And,
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to. This is a modern multimedia age, and unless you keep up with the way things are presented in a modern multimedia age, you're going to lose the audience. And so Dick Allgaier was the one who pioneered this because he was a celebrity newscaster for 30 years. Everybody in the state of Hawaii knew him, and so he was more comfortable in front of a camera than not in front of a camera. He wakes up in the morning thinking of what's he going to be saying in front of the camera. So he said, well, look, why don't I start doing sessions standing up interacting with the camera, directly with the audience, and doing the sessions on whiteboards. And because he's used to being on camera, obviously in an entertaining manner, in a theatrically entertaining manner.
No doubt.
And so he started to do that with the Atlantis project, and we were very, we were very impressed. And then Daz Smith, who's a graphic artist, he liked the beauty of it, and so he's one of the best remote viewers on the planet Earth, Daz and Dick. So he actually went out and bought a whiteboard and started to work on how to do that as well. So in this new documentary we have on the Great Pyramid of Giza, we've got a huge amount of coverage of Dick and Daz doing their sessions live on whiteboards, standing up, and in an entertaining, theatrically entertaining manner, meaning it's not boring like watching the grass grows. Like when you see Dick Algar talking about the Great Pyramid of Giza, this isn't primitive remote viewing where you're trying to interpret military doodles. This is where he's drawing the pyramid exactly, and it looks exactly like that. And he's calling it, this is a pyramid. And he describes the environment and everything, and it's absolutely unambiguous that he is describing this thing under totally blind conditions without being told anything about a target, the thing that he's supposed to perceive. He's drawing it and describing it, and he's explaining it. And when Daz Smith does the same thing with the large stone blocks that are being manipulated into place, well, he's drawing them. He's a graphic artist. He's a great sketcher. So he's drawing them exactly, calling them large stone blocks, describing the people moving them. I mean, exactly correct. So all the verifiable components of the sessions are totally spot on. And I can say this without any ambiguity, that the quality of the remote viewing data is as good as if both Dick and Daz were there in the past and witnessed it with their own eyes, and then came to us and was trying to describe it on whiteboards. It's that good. So you don't have to worry about any of the arcane methodology, the procedures, the vocabulary. You don't have to worry about any of that. You get to see remote viewing in action, live, in a really entertaining manner. And so this documentary, the most recent one, The Great Pyramid of Giza, does two things. Not only do we figure out how the Great Pyramid of Giza was built, but we also resolve finally the issue of convincing people that remote viewing is real, because if they watch it, they don't have to know anything specialized about the procedures. They can clearly see that these guys are drawing and describing these targets in the ancient past under totally blind conditions. And it's not ambiguous.
No,
it's totally conclusive.
And there's one thing, you're too close to the fire, so let me help you. There's one thing you're missing.
What's that?
You get to see how they get to what they are viewing. It's not, that it's so great to watch them ask themselves questions. I don't know how to draw this.
Right on the video. They're asking themselves questions like, gosh, what's that doing there? It's like a lip on the block. And they're
yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And also, especially with Dick, he went through a section of, you know what, we should back up and start from the beginning of the video, if you don't mind. But I will say this.
Sure.
He started talking about what's the word I want to say, mining, underneath the ground. Yeah. And he's describing these claustrophobic mining conditions with these tortured, cloned, and I was getting claustrophobic. And the way that he describes it and the way that he's trying to draw it and get the idea out, he has no idea what the marker is. Well, neither does Daz, for that matter. But the point is, you do, because you know what the title of the video is, and that's the thing. So you are, as the viewer, you know the end of the movie. Okay.
Yeah, and you're watching him trying to piece it together,
right?
Where you know the conclusion, and you're watching him struggle to piece it together. And the amazing thing is how good they do it. It's not
fascinating.
Every one of your listeners should realize this is not ambiguous. Once you watch it, it's finally raised to the level of what I consider to be, for any reasonable person, conclusive proof that remote viewing is real. Done by these people. It's unambiguous. Now, it's not easy to do it the way they do it. There's only a few stellar remote viewers that can do something like that. It's like watching Lang Lang play the piano. if you go and take some lessons on how to play the piano, you'll get through a few simple songs pretty nicely, but if someone watches you, they'll see you squinting at the music, and it'll sound a little stilted, but they'll get the tune all right. But when you go to hear Lang Lang play at Carnegie Hall, I mean, he's got his eyes closed, he's in a trance, his fingers are moving literally faster than the eye can see, and the music is just swelling out of the piano and filling Carnegie Hall. That's when you just look and say, oh, so that's what it's all about. That's it. Well, these guys, Dick Allgaier and Daz Smith, when you listen to them, that's what you say. Oh, so that's what it's all about.
It's pretty fascinating, scary too as well. And what I mean by
it's scary.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely it's a lot of fun. And I was mesmerized, and I watched the video twice, and I went right up before showtime watching it a second time because I couldn't get enough of it. I can guarantee you I'm going to watch it tonight when I'm in bed. So, but now let's back up. I have a couple of different questions, and you had said that I want to set this up with. You said, Jimmy, ask me anything about the video. And so the first thing I want to get to is I talk about this on the show all the time, Courtney, is I think the pyramids were there when the Egyptians started to rise and come up. This is my own thing. I mean, when 1 million years from now, and when somebody visits planet Earth and the human race is long gone, there'll still be one thing standing. It'll be the pyramids.
Yeah.
So it'll be the one piece of evidence of mankind millions of years from now, just like it's standing now, just like it looked like it did 5,000 years ago. So when and where do you think? I mean, can you put a time date now on this? Yeah. Okay, what is that?
We can bookmark it. See, because of the Atlantis project that we did, that is very clearly tied back to 70,000 years ago, because the thing that we actually watched was resulting in a huge explosion. This is us, our ancestors. They had a technologically advanced society that was about 100 years more advanced than we are today. So we're pretty close. They were a little bit more advanced, but pretty close. And if you and I were walking down the streets of that society, we would feel very much at home. The buildings, we would not know what city we were in, and the language would sound a little weird, but we would clearly know we were on Earth, and this is the type of, skyscraper type buildings that we'd know that we were on. This is our type of place. And what they did is they had a secrecy cloak science project. They had really a clean source of energy, a crystalline source of energy that was way cleaner than our nuclear power. But they were going after more. They were going after the heat inside the Earth. And they drilled a hole out in the New Zealand area through the crust. And remind you, we have an 8,000-mile diameter ball of liquid rock, molten rock, that we live on. And we have an 8-mile thin crust that's on top of that ball of liquid rock. So this is really not a good planet to have a long-term civilization, because the lake that we live on can be exposed to solar anomalies that cause the currents to flow and can disrupt the surface. But the point is that they were actually trying to drill a hole. And this isn't like a volcanic crack that would produce a seeping of lava eventually into a pocket, and then it would pop like a pimple. This was like the Lincoln and Holland tunnels being drilled straight through the crust to get at the heat below. And they thought they could actually contain it, and they couldn't, and it had a blowout, and it was an explosion that was way bigger than any atomic explosion that we've ever had on the surface. And it blew out the whole side of the planet. And that area near New Zealand, underwater, that's the thinnest crust spot on the planet, and it's also the largest concentration of lava rock. Well, the antipode for that position, for that spot. Now, the antipode is the spot on the planet that's on the exact opposite spot of the globe. If you blow out one side on one spot of the globe, you're going to get a dent somewhere else. And that dent will be in the antipode, the exact opposite spot. Well, that antipode for the place where all the lava rock is, where that blowout happened, is exactly 1,000 miles west of Portugal and Morocco, 3 miles deep, in the underwater anomaly that looks like the ruins of an ancient city. That meant Europe extended at least 1,000 miles west of where it ends now. And all that area simply sunk, and that's the antipode area from the blowout area that was below that. And a lot of other sort of things seem to have sunk, and the Malibu anomaly may have been part of that process as well. So what we're talking about is a society that destroyed itself, but it looked like us. Now, that happened 70,000 years ago, and that's really not in dispute in mainstream science either. You can look up in Wikipedia the Toba catastrophe theory, T-O-B-A, and that references Lake Toba of Indonesia, where they think there might have been the location of the explosion that happened 70,000 years ago. They have the general area correct, but it's not north of Australia, it's to the east of Australia. But they're still in the general area of the globe that's correct. So they don't have the exact spot correct, but their mainstream still understands it somewhere. But it's also, clearly, it wasn't a normal volcano that had that blowout, because volcanoes don't blow out like that. But that explosion, even mainstream science agrees, killed off all humans on the planet except for 2,000 to 8,000 surviving pairs. Now, there might have been a few other survivors, but they weren't having babies. So the 2,000 to 8,000 surviving pairs of people, those people were having babies, and absolutely everybody that's on the planet Earth today is related to those 2,000 to 8,000 surviving pairs of people. So whether you're Aborigine, African, Caucasian, Native American, Asian, you name it, we're all directly descended from those 2,000 to 8,000 surviving people from 70,000 years ago.
Those 8,000 pairs. I don't want to interrupt, but I kind of have to. Was that scattered around, or is that in one geographic location?
We don't know. All we know is that the genetic evidence is very clear on that. We're all related to the same ancestors, 2,000 to 8,000 surviving pairs. But we do know that a lot of land sunk, and we can see the ruins today. And for those of you who are interested in why the governments are supporting research down in Antarctica under those very harsh conditions, well, they're not looking for mastodon bones. They're looking for technology. That's what's really going on down there, because it's easier to get at the stuff that's buried there than 3 miles deep underwater in the Atlantic Ocean. So, there's a lot to be gained under that ice. Anyway, so the point is that this anomaly happened around 70,000 years ago, and here we are today, 70,000 years into the future, and the pyramids happened somewhere in the middle. So the pyramids had to have happened closer to our time period than the 70,000 years ago time period, because the civilization had to build itself up enough to have enough people. So, you couldn't have done this, say, 60,000 years ago, because there simply weren't enough people around to do that.
Right.
You needed more people. So you're probably talking, a ballpark of 15,000, 20,000 years ago is probably a good idea. But one of the things that you really have to look at, especially with the remote viewing data, the verifiable stuff in the remote viewing data were, you couldn't get better with that. The things they were supposed to perceive, they perceived exactly correct, and you watch it yourself with remote viewing live. You're watching it in action.
Right.
And so you don't have to be convinced that the remote viewing works. It's convincing just by looking at it. And so the other information that they get fills in the blanks of how the Great Pyramid was built. And clearly there was extraterrestrial involvement as far as these remote viewing data are concerned. And the extraterrestrial data, the extraterrestrial content was a surprise to us. We were not expecting it, but it just happened. And it was malevolent. It wasn't good.
It was clearly a bad scene.
It was a bad scene.
It was a bad scene.
So really what the pyramids are, as much as we like to look at them romantically, and I traveled to Egypt to look at the pyramids and went ooh, ah, just like everybody else, but they're essentially a pile of rocks. with absolutely no practical purpose whatsoever. There's no shelter. They don't produce energy to heat homes. They're just a pile of rocks. They're a mystery, and that's all they were ever designed to be, is a mystery. So in the construction of the pyramids, they used high technology to, like lasers, to like cut the rocks out of the quarry walls. And then they used the levitation technology to move the big blocks, which are 80 tons in weight, bigger than the size of a school bus, from the Aswan area, the big stone granite blocks, from the Aswan area, to which is 500 miles or 800 kilometers south of Giza, all the way to Giza. And so that's the only way they actually could have done it, and the remote viewing data clearly says that. Now, for those of you who are in the audience sort of rolling your eyeballs and saying, oh gosh, now levitation. Well, you know, levitation is well known to us now. You can go to YouTube and do a search for acoustic levitation using sound waves to raise things up and move them horizontally. And you'll see good demonstrations. We know how to do that now. And we also have magnetic levitation that works really well. The maglev trains. Well, for example, the train in Japan, that train goes 200 miles an hour. And it's comparable in size and weight to the big stone granite blocks. And it doesn't touch anything. It's all levitated above, you can't even say railroad tracks because it doesn't touch the railroad tracks, but it's levitated and it goes 200 miles an hour, carrying hundreds and hundreds of people. So, you know, we do understand some elements of levitation today, and it's only a matter of more time before we start figuring out, you know, more of the nuances of how to move heavy things. But that's the only way they could have built it. You have to, when you get this new information, you have to compare it with what mainstream science says was actually done.
Well, I'm going to jump in there really quick, because when you and I have talked to, well, for instance, Michio Kaku one day.
Yes.
We were talking privately, not on the air, person to person, one-on-one, okay? And we're alone. And I was like, okay, you know, Michio, let's wrap. And he's okay. All right, well, you know, there's these stone monuments that are 15,000 years old. Whoa. And I was like, what? 15,000 years old? I said, yeah. And he goes, no, impossible. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, no, Ice Age, you know what? 10,000 years. If you want to talk to me about something, you know, 8,000 years ago, 5,000 years, that's one thing. But in 10,000 years, and there, no, it doesn't exist. And I go, but no, Jimmy. And it was amazing to me, Courtney, how he didn't even want to discuss or even think or take the conversation there. And it's frustrating to me, the orthodoxy out there when it comes to history and archaeology and geology and anything else, they just put the clamp down at 10,000 years. And
I'm a big Michio Kaku fan, but you know, anyone in the mainstream is defending ferociously a paradigm that if they accept even small chinks in the armor,
right,
the entire house of cards collapses.
Completely.
So you're not talking about something that's small that they're trying to defend. If they acknowledge even the slightest deviations from these things, literally everything falls to pieces. For example, if you look at remote viewing, just the remote viewing itself, and accept that is even possible, even one experiment of these transferring of perceptual information across time and space, you've got to completely throw out the paradigms of physics that are taught at the university levels at the end of the story. And then you have to start talking about, well, then what discoveries were made using remote viewing? And then you're talking about a complete revision of our understanding of human history. And it's clear that the physics that you're taught at the university is defendable only by excluding information that would prove it false. And it's also clear that the history of human civilization can be taught at the university levels and maintained logically only by excluding data that would otherwise prove it to be false. And so this is the primary business of university education, to put barriers around the types of information that are allowed into the classroom.
Exactly.
And as soon as you acknowledge it, that's why when you say, well, what about, there's something 15,000 years ago. As soon as you acknowledge something like that, it's not an anomaly that you're willing to entertain. It's the whole house of cards that you're willing to collapse.
And you teach and have taught, and obviously you've learned at universities all around the world. Not only here.
So I deal with these people all the time, but I want to say that I don't talk about remote viewing at the university level. I'm a mathematician, applied mathematician who works in a social science program. So I teach statistics, nonlinear differential and difference equations, things like that. Nonlinear mathematics is my forte.
But what about the cafeteria?
Basic idea is that I have limits on what I can talk about at the university, and I don't mind that because I love talking about mathematics also.
But what about in the cafeteria? All of you PhD types sitting around?
The best way to answer this question, Jimmy, honest, is to not refer to my experience, but to John Mack's experience. Right. The late John Mack, who was the professor of psychiatry, who founded his department at the Cambridge Hospital in psychiatry at Harvard. And he's also the biographer of the greatest biography of T. Lawrence of Arabia.
Right.
And he Pulitzer Prize winning author. I mean, you can't get better.
Right.
And he wrote a book called Abduction, where he was writing about the people who were reporting the UFO abduction experience. And rather than drug these people by assuming they're nuts, he listened to them instead. Well, Harvard dragged him through a 1.5 year academic inquisition, which was designed to get rid of him. They were trying to revoke his tenure, despite how big he was. And this was only ended by Alan Dershowitz, the lawyer who wrote a commentary in the local Cambridge paper saying you're not only depriving him of his constitutional rights, but his tenure and so on. I mean, there's violations all over the place. And like a week later, the dean closed the book on the whole case and said, John Mack can do whatever he wants. Well, no one ever offered to repay his tens of thousands of dollars of legal fees that he had to spend in order to try to defend, continue to be a professor. But the mainstream went after him like with the kitchen sink. And I was talking to John at a conference up in South Dakota, and it was very interesting. He said, and actually he mentioned this during his presentation, the thing that surprised him the most was not the information that he was doing, the discoveries that he was involved with, the writings that he was involved with. What surprised him the most is his own colleagues at Harvard, that they were not interested in some of this information. He said, I can't figure out why they're not interested in looking at this stuff. This is really fascinating stuff. But the response is, when our educational environment, this goes back to what you and I were talking about in the beginning of the show, our educational environment is really orchestrated, dictated by people whose intellectual and emotional investment in the academy is really fundamentally vested in maintaining their positions of authority. And as soon as you start talking about this new types of information, you're talking about the complete throwing out of intellectual sets of ideas that they have been developing and working on for all of their adult life. And so you're talking about people who have a vested interest in wanting to be the guy, the man on top, suddenly being shown to be what they often call the proverbial king with no clothes.
Right.
That there's just nothing there, that they're simply wrong. And not only have they been teaching stuff that's bogus, but that they have been involved in the restriction of information entering into the university life by fighting. Now, this is not surprising. For example, in physics, this is just among mainstream physics, fights that they have among themselves. It's very difficult for physicists who don't support string theory to get a job in mainstream departments. This is there's a lock on the string theorists over their departments, and if you don't sort of fall in line with that, you're just not going to get a job. So a lot of physicists who support alternative understandings of how reality can be pieced together, they end up doing other things. Some actually work on farms. Some do other types of jobs, but they have trouble getting funding because they don't sort of fall in line with the string theory stuff. So this type of restrictions are very common. If you look at anthropology, the intellectual paradigms are sort of locked in with the Darwinian thinkers. And so the Darwinian thinkers have us popping out of apes essentially 200,000 years ago.
Right.
Well, the reality is it's impossible to pop a modern human out of an ape in a couple 100,000 years. These things take hundreds of millions of years for these evolutionary changes to happen like that. And the reality is we're actually seeing archaeological data that clearly contradict the idea that we were hunter-gatherers, primitive, just popped out of apes just a couple 100,000 years ago. Someone who actually amassed a tremendous amount of this information and actually documented it remarkably well in a big fat book is Michael Cremo. And
Absolutely.
That's Cremo.
Oh, yeah.
And in his book, Forbidden Archaeology. So, there's lots, and you cannot teach that at the university level. You can't use that book in a course at the university levels and start talking about this stuff. You'd be attacked mercilessly.
Well, also with your this video or the theory, not only that, but the stuff that you've done on the Sphinx too. But for anybody over in Egypt that is graduating from university over there and wants to be an Egyptologist and get into the mainstream stuff and maybe go work for Zahi, right? If you even think about stepping out of bounds on anything that they accept as normal over there, you'd never get a job. And you can't.
It's very challenging. But that's why tenure exists. Tenure exists to defend people. It's very rarely used for its intended purposes. But it even though John Mack had to use it, and he had to fight to keep it. He almost lost it. Tenure is what essentially helped him to survive. So tenure is supposed to protect people who are at some point in their academic career considered to be intellectually smart enough to have their ideas protected. It's supposed to protect them so that they can try to venture out in these other realms.
Right.
So, but very few people actually do that. Very few people actually try to raise ideas that rock the boat. 99 and 9/10% of everybody does the opposite. They raise ideas that don't rock the boat, that sort of fit in with the traditional paradigms. And it's not a fault, it's not a criticism, it's an observation of human nature. So it's not that the universities are doing anything that's bad or that the professors are doing anything that's bad. It's just that this is what human nature is. This is what people are like. So we're not criticizing people, we're describing people.
Now, what about rocking the boat before tenure?
I have never seen a situation where someone who rocked the boat with these subject matters before tenure and was able to keep their job.
Right.
They ended up being fired before tenure.
And that's what's wrong. That's what's so wrong with the world. And Robert Schoch and I spent so much time talking about this subject one night.
Well, Robert Schoch, the Boston University professor, Robert M. Schoch, who wrote the actually fascinating book, Forgotten Civilization, he's so fascinating. He also, by the way, has tenure.
Yes.
But he has an interest in studying civilizations that he's dating 10, 15,000 years ago. And his big theory is that the sun burps every once in a while, and that even NASA doesn't complain about that. There are these coronal mass ejections that eventually spew out and hit us. And if you have a solar burp that hits the planet, it's going to affect the lava underneath. We live on a lake of lava, and the currents will change, and it'll be very disrupted. And basically, if you're to summarize Robert M. Schoch's work, what you're going to say is that civilization is okay for every 3, 4, 5, 10,000 years. But if you extend it like 20, 30,000 years, something's going to happen that will grind us down to a pulp. And that's basically what he talks about in his book, Forgotten Civilization. And when it grinds us down to a pulp, we essentially have to start over again. Now, for whatever reason, the Atlantean civilization that we described, they did not get driven down to a pulp by a solar event. they clearly destroyed themselves. But other civilizations seem to have been driven, ground down to a pulp by solar events, a la Robert M. Schoch's work. So you sort of get a combination of people killing themselves off versus some event that sort of is very highly disruptive. But basically, this planet is not a good planet for a highly developed civilization. You need 1 million years of peace and calm to develop a civilization that's really got a huge destiny. And if you're talking about throwing the civilization upside down every 20,000 years, that's just not good. I mean, this planet is ideal for a botanical or zoological garden. For animals and plants, it's perfect for that. But for a civilization planet, it's not good. So the conclusion that I draw is that this was a planet of last resort for human civilization. So I'm assuming that the people who settled here are people who were leaving some type of place elsewhere that was not good. By the way, mainstream scientists working for SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, had a congressional hearing last week where they were saying they're 100% certain now that life is ubiquitous throughout the galaxy, and that includes intelligent life. And this will all be clearly thrown out or developed within 20 years. I mean, this was congressional hearings with the guys running SETI. So, it's not really in dispute among people who really know what's going on that if there is life out there, well, that life probably is as screwed up as our life. And something happened out there, in my opinion, that drove people here. So I'm assuming that humans came here in large part for exploration, in large part for fun, for recreation, vacations, but also for refugees. And I would suspect that a lot of people came here and settled here permanently through either the birth, by being born here, or traveling on ships and settling in. I suspect that happened in large part as a result of a refugee status. And when you look at the Great Pyramid of Giza, my interpretation of that is that extraterrestrials came in here, created a slave-master relationship society that was very different from what we have today, and is very different from what we had 70,000 years ago. And they did it by messing with the mentally messing with the human leadership, apparently, and creating a society in which these massive stone structures were built despite huge costs in terms of death and suffering. And then after the structures were built in a manner that was very similar to prison do work. For example, if you go to prison, the first thing you do is guards give you a sledgehammer and they say, go crack those rocks. Well, at the end of the day of cracking those rocks, you're exhausted, and nothing productive comes from the cracking of the rocks, but you're not thinking about revolt or escape because you just want to go to sleep. That seems to be what the Great Pyramid projects did on a physical level. They just exhausted everybody. And at the end of the Great Pyramid project, they were used to create a light show, which is like going to see a laser light show at a rock concert, channeling energy planetary-wide with pyramids scattered all over the place. That clearly came out in the remote viewing data. Mm-hmm. And a religion came out of it. So it looks like this was a project for brainwashing at its best. And so it was to create a mystery, a religion, and it essentially took human civilization and sent it in a different direction. Now, if human civilization was left to develop by itself, it would have turned out to be like the Atlantean civilization, and it would have turned out to be like what we have today. Skyscrapers, not pyramid buildings, but skyscrapers, rectangular buildings that actually have practical use.
We're all three.
And, you would have had a completely different type of society. So my interpretation of the Great Pyramid of Giza project is an example of an attempt by extraterrestrials to control the human population in some way, both by instilling a religion and also exhausting them by creating a mystery of some type. And it worked. It worked spectacularly well. I must say, though, that the remote viewing data also clearly suggest that a second group of benevolent extraterrestrials came and essentially chased off the first group. and that ended it. And that's when the first group sort of went elsewhere. I don't know where they went. They could still be around causing troubles, but they were not in control anymore. And the second group, essentially, they looked like us, and they distributed new knowledge. They probably were thought of as gods, and the ancient Egyptian civilization simply melted away. It just disappeared. And people went back to being sort of normal, and here we are, a few thousand years later, with our normal types of rectangular buildings, and back to the way we should be. But anyway, that's my interpretation of these data, and the data, you have to watch the documentary yourself. By the way, listeners should know that they can connect to it just by going to our website, farsight.org, farsight.org, and there's a 40-minute announcement video that contains 25 minutes of the actual documentary right on the top of our homepage. And right below that, there's a banner saying the Great Pyramid of Giza, and just clicking on it allows you to either get it as it tells you more about it and get it as immediately as a video on demand from Vimeo or as a DVD from Amazon.
Right. Now, we have all the links up on jimmychurchradio.com to get there. But are you suggesting then that civilization is cyclical? Where we get
on
to
this planet, either the cyclical part involves the end of the Atlantis period,
right,
where they destroyed themselves, and then our rebirth today,
right.
But the period with the pyramid construction, which now apparently extends to the pyramids that you see in the Bosnia region as well as in the Mexican region and Peru. I mean, it's apparently a worldwide phenomenon. That was something that was in the middle, and that I think was a one-time anomaly that happened. But basically the cyclical aspect of it follows more along the lines of Robert M. Schoch's work, which is we build ourselves up and some solar thing happens and grinds us down. But the Atlantean thing was not destroyed by that. The Atlantean thing was destroyed because they had secrecy cloaked science, and they did it just the way we're doing it today. We're repeating ourselves, and they blew themselves up. I mean, they destroyed themselves. And we had the whole story, that Atlantis project. Once you see the DVD, the whole story is out there of exactly what those last 5 days were like. How they saw the stuff unraveling in terms of on their computer monitors, big flat panel TV type things, just the same way we have it today. They couldn't believe their eyes. They saw their experiment go belly up. They had a limited time to sort of announce to people what was happening. There was an attempt to save people on boats. Almost all of them were women who were childbearing or childbearing age. They left the little old ladies and they left the men. The only men on the boats were those who were operating the boats. I mean, they knew it was a possible extinction level event and that they did it to themselves. So that's different from the solar anomaly type things that Robert M. Schoch talks about. But yeah, for whatever reasons, civilization doesn't last very long on this planet, and we have to build ourselves back up. Our final destiny, Jimmy, is not on this planet. Our final destiny has got to be as a spacefaring civilization. We have to get off this rock. This rock is not a healthy place to live.
Will we eventually find evidence of, to just shut up the orthodoxy out there? Will we ever find some kind of evidence underground or something that was accidental, like this anomaly that's off of the coast of Malibu here? I mean,
that anomaly off the coast of Malibu is actually got some advantages over the anomaly that's on the bottom of the ocean 1,000 miles west of Portugal and Morocco, because that's 3 miles deep.
Right.
That's really deep. So the anomaly off the coast of Malibu, while it's deep, it's not that deep. And there are submarines that could go down and see it, take great pictures. I mean, you're dealing with sonar data now, but the reality is you could, for example, James Cameron, the guy who did the Avatar movie and so on. He has a submarine that went down to the bottom of the Marianas Trench. I mean, it can go 7 miles deep. And it's on mothballs as far as I understand right now. I mean, so it is possible for devices that we have now to actually go down there and, well, from what the sonar data looks like, it looks like a tabletop that's almost like nuclear bomb-proof type thickness.
It does.
And underneath that, there's big columns and gaps where it looks like a small submarine could actually float right in and see what's under there. And so, you know, James Cameron's submarine could do that as to be a piece of cake for something like that. So getting him involved in something like that is the greater challenge. Getting the submarine to do its job is the easier thing, but getting people to actually become convinced that it's worthwhile doing to get the submarine off mothballs and use it, that's always the bigger challenge.
Yeah, the evidence, you know, it's one thing to sit around and talk and theorize. That's one thing. I'm waiting for that one piece of evidence, whether it is off the coast of Portugal or whether it's in a cave somewhere, or in this anomaly off of Malibu. There will be some type of evidence that that comes forward. I do firmly believe we have it with the Sphinx and the pyramids out in Egypt. The lack of hieroglyphs on the Great Pyramid is the one thing, and the fact that nobody really knows what it's used for. At least modern academics don't.
Well, look at it this way. Look at the traditional mainstream explanations for how it was built, and look at what we came up with.
Exactly.
And then you have to judge for it. Now, the mainstream basically says it's the cut and hole method. That means using copper hammers and chisels. They didn't have even brass in those days. Copper hammers and chisels, you're cutting granite rocks, you're chipping granite rocks out of quarries. Now, copper is really soft, and it's much softer than granite, so you can't do that. But anyway, that's what they say happened. And then when you get these cracks, you make cracks in the walls, you stick wood chips in those cracks, and then you sprinkle water on the wood chips, and the wood chips expand, and the rocks crack out of the quarry walls. Now, if you think that's possible, next time you go hiking, find a cliff, and you put some wood chips in a crack in the rock and throw your canteen water on there, and you tell me if the mountain breaks apart. Yeah. I mean, it's so stupid, I don't know where to begin. Those things, those big granite stone blocks were cut perfectly. They fit exactly correctly. You can't even put a human hair in between those stone blocks on the pyramid. And the idea that you had to slice not only the four sides, but also the top and the bottom of something that was bigger than a school bus and weighing 80 tons with copper chisels and wood chips. I mean, Jimmy, give me a break. I mean, it's so ludicrous. I don't know where to begin. There's no way you could get the precision for all those things. And then if you think about it, they say, well, then they transported them. How did they transport them? Mainstream science says that they put them on wet sand with some logs underneath them and rolled them to the lake. You can't put an 80-ton stone block on a log, whether it's wet sand or not. It'll just sink right into the sand. I mean, it's crazy. You can't. It's just so stupid. And then when you take about putting them onto a boat, how are you supposed to lift them up and put them onto the boat? Those things are bigger than the size of a school bus. And if you put one of those rocks on a big boat like that, the boat will be on the bottom of the river in a matter of a second.
Exactly.
So the method that they talk about for cutting is ridiculous. The only way that those perfect sides could have been cut is with like laser type weapons that actually vulcanized or melted the rocks out of the walls, and then they lift them up through this levitation technology, which we clearly describe in the Great Pyramid of Giza video. And then once you get them there, you have to say, well, how many times would you have to do this? We, to this day, would have trouble doing that with one of those blocks. Well, if the mainstream science says that they did that in 20 years, that would require cutting those big blocks out of the quarry walls, moving them to Giza, and installing them 12 times every hour of every day, day and night, 24-hour days. 12 of those blocks have to be put in every hour.
Perfectly.
Every day and
Perfectly.
night.
Perfectly.
For 20 years.
Perfectly. Perfectly.
Perfectly.
Without a mistake.
For 20 years, 20 of those blocks.
Yes.
No, Jimmy, I'm sorry, but it's just ludicrous. They couldn't, with that level of technology that they're claiming happened back then, they couldn't, we'd have trouble doing that, doing even one of those blocks today with our technology. So the idea that they did that with camels and wood chips, I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh at them, but it's so stupid.
No, it is.
So
but
you have to look at the explanations that we come up with, and look at the explanations that mainstream comes up with. And mainstream stuff gets taught at the university levels. Ours doesn't. So you have to judge those things side by side and say, what makes more sense? And so the extraterrestrial explanation really makes sense because the mainstream explanation is totally bonkers.
Do you think Zahi believes what he says?
I don't know who Zahi is.
Zahi Hawass, the director of in Egypt. Yeah. Well, I mean, when I say Zahi, most of the Egyptologists now, with all of the knowledge that is out there, not only with researchers like yourself, but just basic common sense. Now, I mean, we're not as gullible as we were 200 years ago or 100 years ago.
Well, let me say this much. If he threw out the mainstream ideas and started to talk about these other new discoveries, he wouldn't keep his job.
Well, okay. So, but I guess my question is, in the inside, in his inner being, do you really think that he believes, what he says now? Because the basic stuff that is out there, it's obvious that 5,000 years ago that the Egyptians didn't go from not knowing how to grow wheat, and 100 years later knowing how to construct the pyramids. It was an impossibility. There's just no way they had that kind of knowledge. There was just no way that you went from being cavemen in the desert, scrounging for seeds, to building the pyramids, in 2500 or 3000 BC. There's just no way. They were already there. If you know what I'm saying. And that's why I asked, do you really think Zahi today, or anybody over in Egypt, or any other Egyptologists around the globe, can really believe what they're saying now with all of this other knowledge that's out there?
Well, it's impossible for me to describe the belief systems of other people. However, I do know that disclosure of new knowledge of the level that we're talking about today never comes from authorities. It always comes from people who make these original discoveries and then are persistent at talking about them, come no matter what. And then over the years, the masses grow to accept it. And then the authorities are the last to come on board. For example, President Obama about 6 weeks ago became the first president to acknowledge that Area 51 exists.
Right.
Now, everybody knows Area 51 exists, and they knew that going back decades. Independence Day with Will Smith. I mean, they have tour buses going past Area 51. I mean, everybody knows it. It gets to the point where it's ludicrous and laughable, and at that point only does the authorities confess up and say, okay, so Area 51 exists. President Obama was the first president ever to publicly acknowledge that it exists. So, you can see that the authorities are not the pioneer busters. They're not the ones who are going to change their authorities based on the idea that there is information that they have, that they control, that is accepted. And it's only when it's to the point where it's simply not that their belief system that they're promoting is simply so widely disregarded that it's useless to them, that they'll say, okay, so that's not true anymore. So now they fully accept that Area 51 exists, because the idea of saying that it doesn't exist just isn't useful to them anymore. Now, if you look at the Phoenix Lights as another example, the Phoenix Lights are those famous lights that traveled in formation over 5 states and then settled in over Phoenix for an hour and a half, and were witnessed by hundreds of thousands of people, and that included Fief Symington, the governor of Arizona. And some of these were so low that they blocked out the entire sky, and you could see the underbellies of the ships. So, and that was, people like Fief Symington saying things like that. Mm-hmm. So when you have that happen and not covered by the mainstream news at all, and then 6 months later, a lieutenant pilot being allowed to come out, officially sanctioned by the U.S. government, and says, oh, that was some flares that we released in a training exercise we were doing. That was covered by mainstream news everywhere. So, they still had some purchase on the spreading of that information. Even though it was clearly stupid, they still had some benefit to saying things like that. So it's only when that benefit completely evaporates and people, when official statements like flares, flares come down, they don't hover over your head for an hour and a half, and they're not large and look like the underbellies of ships and block out the whole sky because they're right above your head.
That's right.
Those aren't, anyway, but when you come up with these so-called official explanations, and you find that the mainstream press is willing to still publish it and spread it about, well, then it's still giving you some value as a governmental authority. So it's only when that value completely disappears that the authorities will say, okay, so they weren't flares.
Well, what do you think it is for Egypt? Not only Egypt, but the pyramid. Is it tourism? Is it money? Where's the value of sticking to your guns now? If you brought in the ET hypothesis,
there's a lot of things. First of all, there's mainstream acceptance worldwide. There's a lot of intellectual communication between the Egyptologists in Egypt as well as the outside world. And then you have to also understand that the authorities that want to keep a lid on this type of information, governmental authorities, especially like in the United States, they have a far reach. And it does not mean that the Egyptologists in Egypt or anywhere else are being directly connected to, say, the Defense Intelligence Agency. But funding and other sources could and would dry up for some of these people for what you might look at as mysterious grounds if they started to talk in ways that were out of the party line. So it's not easy these funding sources can be easily manipulated. This is the idea that academia is independent and free and can just, take ideas and just evaluate them based on the merit of the ideas. We've known that's not true for a long, long time. In fact, Max Planck, well over 100 years ago, said that change in the paradigms of human understanding, especially physics, does not occur in science because somebody comes up with new ideas and everyone says, wow, that's a great new idea, and then adopts it. It occurs because of generational change. You have older people literally retiring and dying off, and younger people who are acclimatized to these new ideas or introduced to these new ideas at an early age sort of replace them. But that means essentially that the dominant paradigms that you're taught at the university level today are often at least 30, 40 years out of date. It's the young people doing graduate work that are coming up with new ideas. But even they have their restrictions, because if they were to come up with new ideas and work on those new ideas, the older people could reject them. The older people that are running the show could say, I'm not going to support that graduate student. The person's not doing what, not supporting my ideas. And so it's even challenging for those young people. But nonetheless, some young people do keep those ideas, new ideas in their mind. And when they get to be 40 and 50, they fight to install some of those new ideas. Again, many of those new ideas are not paradigm busters,
Right.
but at least they're some significant changes from the mainstream, and that's how our science tends to evolve incrementally.
Have you had somebody, from mainstream orthodox with not only Egypt but also general history come to you and go, okay, hey, you know what? The levitation, 18 inches above the ground, yeah, it could happen. I'm with you on that. But
no,
they won't. But
that
they won't
doesn't
speak.
happen. That
It doesn't happen at
However,
all.
I can say that when I first started doing this, mid 1990s, that everyone thought I had simply lost it and was deluded, and many were actually openly stating they regretted giving me tenure. I mean, it was
really.
It was a really sort of a embarrassing moment and I'm not talking my university. I'm talking nationally, because I had been teaching at UCLA. I had been teaching at the University of Michigan. I mean, I was a star in terms of nonlinear mathematics, especially with the application of deterministic systems in chaos, catastrophe type series in the social sciences. Very few people could get close to what I was doing. And then suddenly to have me talking about not only remote viewing, but extraterrestrial life, that was a big shocker. However, I have stuck to my guns,
right.
And nobody has been laughing for a good many years. Nobody laughs anymore. So, and I speak at prestigious venues all over the place. And, and it's clear that the environment has changed, but absolutely nobody laughs anymore. And so, but the real question that's of interest to me is very similar to what happened with John Mack. He said he was always wondering why his colleagues at Harvard weren't more interested in the subjects he was talking about.
Right.
Well, I'm sort of really wondering, why am I still the only? I can say I'm clearly the leading scholar in the subject of remote viewing, as it was done, or as it is done using the military or military-derived methodologies, because I'm the only scholar. Why am I still the only scholar that studies this? Now, clearly, many people are watching. I can speak at any venue. I speak at universities. I go all over the place. I mean, just do a YouTube search on Courtney Brown. You'll get stuff all over the place.
Right.
The point is, why am I still the only one? Now, no one's laughing anymore, but there's still a lot of fear out there. A lot of people don't want to risk losing what they've gotten.
Let's talk. I want to get to a couple of things really quick about the Pyramid of Giza before
Sure.
I let you go. And thank you for hanging out. This is just absolutely fascinating. And for everybody out there, look, it's just Courtney and I hanging out in my living room. This is just a conversation that happens with no agenda, and I'm fascinated, and I've really enjoyed it. So let's keep moving forward. The ET involvement that was brought up by both Dick and Daz in their viewing of this. And he brought it all up. I mean, we had Dick talked about the praying mantis lady, who was benevolent, by the way, was very nice and kind. But
actually, that's actually not true. That was remember, she was nurturing those clones, the clones that she was involved in making to do the mining. For those in the audience who haven't yet seen the documentary, the basic idea is that the mining procedure used high energy devices to melt, like lasers, to melt the rocks out of the stone. And that produced volcanism, which is liquid rock, and that produces tremendously toxic gases. And for example, if you're a volcanologist where you actually study volcanoes, you don't go to the edge of those volcanoes and just breathe. You bring your oxygen with you. You have to have sealed environments. The liquid rock melted is extremely toxic. And so they needed to develop other beings who would be able to do that work. And so they developed clones who were intellectually stunted, but more resistant to those toxic environments. And they also gave them breathing masks, which offered some eye protection and filtration. But they became defective as well and were discarded.
Well,
so,
when I said benevolent, what I meant was when he drew her, she looked kind of evil, and what he wanted to say was, look, she's that, yes, but she's not, she's a nurturer. She is here to, she wasn't mean. I think that's what he tried to, because what he drew was scary, is what I'm trying to say, and he didn't want her to be scary, or also he didn't want her to be a he. He had said she is a she.
She was clearly a female.
Yes, exactly.
And to my knowledge, that was the first live interaction between a remote viewer and an extraterrestrial that was caught on video.
Yeah, it was amazing to watch.
That's really something that people need to see. And it was not staged or set up. It was just happened by chance, and the cameras were running. So that was a very interesting experience. But she was not pleased with it, and she was very fascinated that a human could do that, but she was not pleased by it, and she told him to get the blankety blank out of there.
and also at that same time, when he was drawing her and describing her, that's when he went through the army of clones. Yeah. And was drawing them marching into. At that point, he hadn't even gotten to the molten lava. If you remember, he changed pants. But that was another fascinating aspect, was for him to. And again, we're talking about the mining of the rocks and how this was done for the pyramids. And he had gotten to the point where these were absolute machined, identical clones, marching down row by row, lockstep, and short. You remember? I think he said that.
Yeah.
And that's how it got done. They didn't need to be manipulated. They were genetically dumbed down.
Now, mind you, those are only the ones who did the mining.
Right.
The ones who did the assembly were like you and me. They were normal human beings.
Correct.
But the mining could not be done by people. We would not have survived.
It was fascinating. Then he got into the whole gas mask, and I thought that was, he didn't even know where he was going.
No, but it all, once you look at the whole thing in retrospect, it all makes sense.
Yes.
All the pieces from both Daz Smith and Dick Elmire, they fit together. And none of the stuff contradicts. Stuff that Daz gets does not contradict Dick's stuff, and vice versa. So the stuff is very complementary. It's a whole package that sort of fits nicely. And the mainstream ideas for how this whole stuff was done simply don't make sense at all. So if you're to judge this project's results compare it with mainstream stuff, ultimately you have to say which is more sensible. And even though you have to entertain the idea of extraterrestrials, high technology, and stuff like that, it's much more reasonable than the mainstream stuff. So just on the level of common sense, we win.
Yeah, I encourage everybody to go and watch this documentary. And there's one spot when Daz, we'll leave it at this, and then we're going to change. I've got a bunch of questions that have been emailed, and I want to hit you with really quick.
Okay.
But when Daz draws the bottom half of the pyramid, right, and you watch this, your heart starts to skip a beat. It's like, no way. No way. And at that point, there's no question about what he is talking about, even though he probably doesn't know. But when that hits the whiteboard, that's a shocker. That's a turning point. And
now mind you, we had sort of had a long-term prohibition against esoteric targets at Farsight, because we had the military guys on our board of directors, and they didn't like esoteric targets. So extraterrestrials type stuff was just outlawed.
Right.
And the viewers were the most surprised at all when they were getting this content, because they was like, what? This can't be. This is a Farsight project. We're not allowed to have. But they did their stuff anyway. They said, well, these are the data. Well, this is what I'm getting, so I'm going to report it. So they reported it. But, the extraterrestrial content that came out, you can call that esoteric content that came out as a surprise to everybody. But, it makes sense, whereas the mainstream ideas simply don't make sense.
Well, and it's a natural progression for both of them when they're going through the viewing, and you can feel it coming, you can feel it, and they both do it. It's extraordinary to watch. And this is the thing. I'm gonna be very blunt with you, Courtney. It's one thing to have an open mind about remote viewing. I don't know if you know Robert M. Knight, but he's a friend of mine, and he just did the documentary on Ingo Swann. And I have a very open mind about all of this. And Robert,
I know Robert well.
Robert and I have been friends since we were kids. Well, I was a kid. He's he's an old guy, but I've known him for 25, 30 years. I've known him for a long time. From
By the way, is that Ingo Swann documentary finished?
Yes, it's done, and I'll talk to you about that after the show. How's that?
Sure.
Or via email. But yeah, it's done. Anyway. It's one thing to have an open mind about it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I do.
Mm-hmm.
I do, and I appreciate it, and I'm fascinated with it. But when I watched Edward do something that I personally knew about last night, that freaked me out. That freaked me. I want to use other language right now, okay? I'm telling you, it freaked me out. And so, again, I knew in advance what he was going for. I did. I'm part of it, but he didn't, and it doesn't validate it. It absolutely just exposes it for being what it is. It is something that is real, tangible, and you can't dismiss it. You just can't.
Actually, one of the things that's very useful to do with remote viewing is to get ideas of what's at a target site, so that you then can follow it up through normal physical means. So having remote viewers do sessions on that anomaly down under the water off the coast of Malibu, that's actually not so good to do just to sort of validate it, to sort of demonstrate that it's correct, but actually to give you the first shot at what's there, just like you would use sonar to give you a first shot, an initial glance at what's there, so that you then have a reason to go down and spend some money with a submarine. So the remote viewing data will tell you all types of stuff that's down there. In fact, depending on the quality of the remote viewing, the number of sessions, and the whole setup of the whole project, you can find the whole story of what's down there, how it got to be down there, what's inside there. You can get everything. But that doesn't mean you stop. Remote viewing data always has to be confirmed. It always has to be validated. So at that point, you say, now I have all the remote viewing data that says what's down there. Now I know enough to go get James Cameron's submarine. Because now I have an idea of what's down there. All we need is physical confirmation. So we want corroboration. So, that's the time to send in the actual cameras. So it's important for people to understand that the remote viewing data have to be considered speculative until they are verified in some way. But getting the remote viewing data by good viewers in a well-controlled project is literally the thing that is needed in order to give you the justification to spend the money to have the physical investigation take place.
Okay, I'm going to bang through some tweets really quick. You ready?
Sure.
Okay. Antarctica. What's under the ice?
Under the water, 3 miles deep, 1,000 kilometers west of Portugal and Morocco, there was a large city that was 1/4 the size of Portugal. And it was clearly a city, working environment, like we have New York, Chicago, that type of thing. The facilities that we investigated, and you can clearly see all of this in graphic detail in the DVD or the video online of the Atlantis project. The facilities down in Antarctica was not a city. It was a scientific and military operation. So they also had buildings, but they were scientific military oriented. And they had that type of look as well. I mean, they were still rectangular, but a lot of it was underground. A lot of it was the buildings extended down underneath the ground as much as they were above the ground. I mean, it was a whole collection of everything. Just like you'd imagine us doing that today. They had hardened buildings. They had, electronic shielding on a lot of the buildings. I mean, the whole works.
Was it cold?
So all of that stuff is either on the ocean bottom off the coast of Antarctica, or under the ice. Now, some of the stuff is not deep under the ice, meaning some of the ice is not very thick, and you can get at it, which is what many of the research projects down there under very harsh conditions are doing. I tell you, they're not digging up mastodon bones. That's not the way. They are not spending all that money to dig up mastodon bones. A lot of them are going after that technology. There's technology under the ice, and it was a scientific military facility that was huge.
What's on Mars?
Well, that's a different set of projects that we've done, but Mars clearly was a planet that not only was warm and hospitable, which is not in dispute in mainstream science, but had a very robust civilization of sentient, advanced, intelligent life. And what you see on Mars is the ruins of that civilization. That civilization had two bad things happen to it. The first was the explosion of a planet that very well may likely have exploded as a result of warfare. But it was a planet that was, you consider it in between the orbit of Mars and Jupiter. In fact, it may have been that Mars was a satellite of that planet. But anyway, that planet blew up. And for lack of a better word, we can call that planet Maldek. But that planet definitely blew up, and that created the asteroid belt. Now, mainstream astronomy likes to think of the asteroid belt as the result of the solar nebula hypothesis, which is the idea that as the primordial solar nebula was condensing and forming the planets, there was some junk that was left over, and there was the asteroid belt. But that's really stupid. The reality is, and this is supported by a tremendous amount of planetary data that was collected by Thomas Van Flandern, who was an extremely mainstream astronomer who was the head of his Department of Celestial Mechanics at the Naval Observatory. And even though this is not the accepted mainstream paradigm, it nonetheless is clearly supported by the data, that there was a planet there that it did explode, and it resulted in the asteroid belt. The planet, when it exploded, apparently was close to Mars, and one half of Mars is scattered with the concussions, the craters, the impacts, and the other side of Mars is essentially crater-free. So the explosion happened and was a really bad day on Mars, but that apparently did not kill off the society entirely. It actually survived, and the final death of Mars was apparently due to a nuclear explosion that occurred on the surface of Mars, and we actually know where that occurred. It was in the Mare Acidelium region, and the radioisotope data from Mars and the atmosphere and so on is very, very clear. The byproducts of a nuclear explosion are very clearly evident in the isotope data. And this is well known by scientists in the know, although it's not well publicized. So we actually know where the explosion took place, and we do know that, there was such an explosion because of the radioisotope data. And that's how Mars finally bit the dust.
Okay, well, were there any survivors? Did anybody leave the planet? That's the obvious question. Did they come here, or that was the end of life there? They didn't have a chance to head to the stars, and is there anything left over?
There's good reason to believe that the last vestige of life that was on Mars did not die completely. And there are beings on Mars today, very few, that are operating high-tech facilities buried underneath. We actually did a project on one of them, a facility that had a waste disposal pipe that had a spray coming out of it. And we had very clear JPL Mailibu Space Science Systems, NASA, photographs of the spray, the shadow underneath the spray, the pipeline leading into domes. We did a project on that. And that turned out to be a facility that was extremely old, and that the people that are now there operating the facility, humanoids, they look like you and I, are not the ones who built it. So whoever built it a long time ago. And the people who are operating it are trying to do the best they can. There's a shortage of spare parts. It's a hardship post, but whatever it does is important to them. And so there are beings that are on Mars now, but those are they're all underground. There's nobody running around on the surface. It's a dead planet as far as I think there's good evidence to believe that there is some plant life and possibly some animal life that still exists on the surface. There is some good photographic evidence that's hushed up that does clearly indicate that there's some animal life that actually managed to survive the extremely harsh environment and thin atmosphere that seems impossible to survive. But, life will find a way, just like Jeff Goldblum said in the Jurassic Park series. Life does find a way even under seemingly impossible situations. But underneath the surface, there are tunnels, there are people that are under there that still operate. But they don't have a long-term future in Mars. It's not like it's harboring a civilization. I don't know how many people are on the planet totally right now.
That was my question.
Might be tens of thousands.
Right.
It's not many.
Right. And why don't they come to the surface? That's the thing. And
well, the surface has nothing to offer them anymore.
Right.
It's got no essentially breathable atmosphere. They have to stay underground in order to be protected from the environment.
Is this something that NASA knows about? Do you think it's absolutely concrete for them, the government itself? And if they do, what's the reason to suppress that kind of information? That would be, something tremendous, I would think.
Jimmy, that's a good question. Can I beg you to, what's the word I want to use? To not tolerate, but to go along with what I'm going to ask you to do. You're on your computer right now. Can you go to our website, farsight.org, and tell the audience, your listening audience, what you're doing at the time? Okay. Go to farsight.org.
I'm going to Farsight.
Farsight, like seeing far, FARSIGHT.org, O-R-G.
Yep, got it.
And down in the nav bar, about 1/3 of the way down the nav bar on the left, you'll see a thing that says Base on Mars.
I'm attempting to scroll. It's still loading, but give me 1 second. Okay, let's see here. RSS feed, you're talking about on the left side, right?
Left side, you'll see the nav bar, the navigation bar. About 1/3 of the way down, you'll see Base on Mars.
Oh, 1/3. I thought you said, I was looking at the bottom. Okay, I just clicked on it.
Okay. And you'll see a video of me giving a presentation at Boulder, Colorado, I believe that was.
Well, there's
the University of Colorado.
There's a handsome guy in the video. That's you?
That's me. That's me.
Just kidding.
And I know. And underneath that, you'll see the Mailibu Space. You'll see the NASA Mailibu Space Science Systems JPL photograph that was the basis for the project.
Right.
And you see the spray and the nozzle, horizontal nozzle.
Target 1. Yes.
Yeah, target 1A, and then the pipeline goes into the target 1B, which is a dome, and then another dome, target 1C, which is below that. We investigated all of that.
Okay.
All right, so that's the official photograph of the spot. Now go a little bit further down, and you'll see the Google Earth photograph of the exact spot in the Mars option of Google Earth.
Nice.
Do you see how it's censored? So this answers your question.
Right.
Do they know about it? All Google Earth data, whether it's Mars data or Earth data, they're all governmental data. And it's censored. We show you the picture. Now, you can't say it's a glitch, a technical glitch, and they don't have it, because you see the real picture right above it.
Right.
They have it.
Right.
But you have to dig that real picture out of an astronomical set of websites. It's hard for the public to do. The Google Earth thing is available to billions of people, so that's the one they censor. And there's the censoring. You can clearly see it. I mean, it's a rectangular
It's
sensor.
blurred out. It's blurred out. Yeah, it's blurred out. It's obvious what they have done here.
So it's. I mean, that's. So that is the answer to your question. Do they know about it? You can see it for yourself. They obviously know about it, and they obviously censor it.
It's very interesting. This is a little bit different than. I'm not going to name names, but you know who I'm talking about. You know, his stuff on Mars. When you look at this is a little bit different. This isn't a strange anomaly. This is spray coming out. It's obvious. It's a gaseous type of
it's a liquid
ejection coming out of the planet. And you've got
it's a horizontal pipe. You see how you can the picture is really clear. It's a horizontal pipe.
Right.
Yeah, and now we have no geological process that does something like that. I mean, we have geysers, but they're a hole in the ground, and the spray comes up vertically.
Right.
This is a straight metallic pipe.
And why would
horizontal?
Exactly. And why would they blur it out like this? That's a blatant. And I'm scrolling.
The Google Earth one they blur out. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm scrolling between the two images, and you can clearly see that it's the same area, and it's an obvious. What's the word that I want to use? Sensor.
You see the little letters on the Google Earth image. It says M11/00099 right on the top of the anomaly.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that number is what you type in at Google Earth on the Mars option in order to fly to that area. Well, that number comes from the actual Mail-in Space Science System, NASA JPL target. So that's where that number comes from. It comes from that exact picture above that. So you're actually taking the actual official NASA number, putting it into Mars option of Google Earth, and getting to that exact spot. So you don't have to try to compare the terrain to see if it's the same spot. They're both identifying the spot with the same exact number.
Interesting, absolutely interesting, and
actually the link to the Mars spot is there as well. Is right below the picture.
Yes, it is. And
that's
So Mars base at Farsight. Okay, now I'm going to ask you a couple of fun questions here. This is just for me, and I kind of always end the show like this. So I'm going to let you have a little bit of fun. How do you answer James Randi?
Oh, you don't. He comes out of that whole realm of the skeptical inquirer type group.
Yeah.
With Carl Sagan and the bunch, and they're not a group that you actually can deal with. So you just let them be.
And you don't.
He's a magician also. He's in the entertainment business, and magicians are really good at doing what they do. And the last person you should ever allow in any one of your experiments is a known magician.
Well, the thing is about James, I understand. In a lot of ways, I respect him. Because he is very tenacious. He's a pit bull, and if he does get on you, you're going to have a hard time getting him, off of you.
Well, I can say this much about James Randi. I consider him sincere.
Yes.
I think that he believes what he believes.
Yes.
And I do think he has a mission that he feels he is following. But that's a different question from whether you asked me. What do you do? Well, what do I do with people like James Randi? I don't do anything. I just let them be.
Right.
But, Carl Sagan, who is very similar to the James Randi personality, he was very similar as well. He was of the belief that anything dealing with psi or phenomena or psychic type phenomena or UFOs, extraterrestrial life, that type of thing, if it wasn't officially housed in the mainstream sort of way of looking at things, it was a pseudo-religion and something, it was sort of what did Marx call it? The opium of the masses.
Opium of the masses.
It was just something that should be discouraged at all cost.
Opium for the masses. That's what it was.
Yeah, something like that. And so, Carl Sagan, similarly, as James Randi, was a sincere individual, and he really did believe what he believed. But that doesn't make it correct.
I want to thank you for coming on. I'm trying to think if I have one. One question just came in. Aquatic ape theory, and I don't know anything about that. Do you?
Aquatic what?
Ape.
That's what I thought you said. I just didn't believe my ears.
Yeah.
No, I simply, some things you just don't know about. I've learned one of the things is that when people hear the stuff that we do at the Farsight Institute, they just assume that we know everything. And so they ask us all types of, well, if you know all about that, then you know about X, Y, and Z. And the reality is we try to, since I'm the front man for the Farsight Institute, I'm the spokesman, I try to be very careful when I talk to let people know that we don't know a lot of stuff. So even things that can have some truth to them that we haven't done a project on, we just simply have to stay silent. Actually, people often come to us and say, well, since you know all this stuff, tell me, I have to know. Who killed JFK? Who killed Jack Kennedy? And I say, I have no idea who killed Jack Kennedy. I know the official party line, but we never did a project on that. So, just because we know a lot of stuff and we have a lot of projects that we put up, it doesn't mean that we know things that are not in those projects.
Well, where do you draw the line? I mean,
I just draw the line on terms of the projects that we've done. But we've done so many projects. I mean, so people just assume, if you go through our website, it's not only are we the only venue for these large public projects where you see remote viewing live being done with these very active public participation projects, but it's a lot too. It's not just that we're the only venue; we're a huge venue. So we have this recent project, the Great Pyramid of Giza. We had the Atlantis project, which was the one before that. We have a project that took 1 year to do on the testing for the existence of parallel realities, multiple universes. We had a climate change project, which is looking for impact of planetary. That was a very successful project, looking for planetary change between 2008, 2013, and one of the results of that was that there would be, to our great surprise, we were looking for small change, but one of the results of that was that there would be some incidents involving potentially disastrous meteors sometime before 2013. And in fact, we had something that exactly fit, which was the Russian meteor and DA-14, which approached from the southern hemisphere, and both of those were potentially disastrous. Remember, mind you, when you look into the future with a situation of parallel or multiple realities, it's impossible to predict a single future. It simply cannot be done. So using remote viewing to predict the future is essentially impossible. However, when big events are involved that would affect a whole swath of multiple parallel realities, then some evidence of those things should be visible. And that's exactly what we see. In fact, with the Russian meteor that happened on February 15th, that was so interesting because there was clearly caught on video an object that came from behind the meteor and hit it like an anti-ballistic.
Yeah, Courtney, you just slowly fizzled out there, and then everything. But so where were we? Right there. We were at. The question was for me morally: is there something that you will not go and view because you can probably see anything that you wanted to see? Is there anything that where you don't have to or want to or morally just won't go?
Not really. If there's a fascinating story to be seen, we'll do it. There is an issue with regard to resources that we have. We don't have a lot of resources in terms of viewer resources or money resources.
Right.
And so we're not going to pick projects that are small. We're not going to pick low leverage projects. So we're not gonna have somebody tell us, okay, remote view what's in my living room in the corner. I mean, we just, which people ask us to do.
Why?
And we're not going to do something like that. These projects take a long time and a huge amount of investment to do. So all of our targets, all of our projects are usually very...
All right, everybody. Thank you for being patient. The internet has gone in and out all day today here in Burbank, like I said. But anyway, thank you, Courtney Brown. That was an amazing, amazing night. And thanks for putting up with the technical glitches. We and I've also things have just been acting strange, and Twitter has come and gone a few times. Just makes you wonder. Look, everybody is saying laugh. I'm watching. If I were Jimmy, I'd be taking care of this situation. Walter White style behind the scenes. I'm right there. But you know what? It's just the way that it is. But I had a really great time. Thank you for everybody hanging out. Ed Riordan coming in. I do want to say again, this remote viewing is a mind blower, and you've got to go to farsight.org. Go check out the videos. It's an amazing thing to watch. And if you haven't seen the Ed Riordan video, we have the links up at jimmychurchradio.com. Go and check that out. So with that, it looks like we have the internet for a little longer tonight. Stay tuned. Coming up next, we have Big Picture Science, followed by After Dark with Brian Alvarez. Next week, Dr. Stephen Greer. That'll be on Wednesday. Then Alejandro Rojas on Thursday, and Joe Buckman on Friday. Now, if you don't know who Joe is, Joe was the original speaker, MC/presenter guy for the Citizens hearing. And it's going to be a fascinating night with him, and that'll be Friday night. Alejandro, we're bringing him in from across the border. Also, that's going to be really good. Stephen, I don't know exactly where he is going to be. Now, I wanted to do a couple of things with email, and email has locked up tonight on the big screen, and I wasn't able to get to anybody's questions tonight. And I'm trying to, again, something is wrong. So I'm going to read this out loud. Brad, whatever your email is, can't read it. Warren, can't. EBE1, can't. Vicky, Vieira, cannot read your email. Ben, I can't read yours. I'm just going down, all the way down the list. Some of this I can't see from the producers. Damon, I can't open yours. Dean, I couldn't open yours. So again, everybody, I apologize for all of that. Something's going on, and you've got to appreciate it with a show like this. The Malibu anomaly. I just want to address this really quick, and I've gotten a lot of email about this and a lot of posts. Those we have stated it all week on the show, but most of the people that send an email are responding to the video or the news, the press release that is out there on other sites. These photographs are not manipulated. I need to stress this. Anybody that's listening to the show that is here for the first time, that is coming in to check it out, they want to come listen to this show because of what they have seen either on Third Phase or any of the websites out there, those files are unmanipulated. Everything that you see online is a straight file. You can go and look at the images yourself on Google Earth. You don't have to have a leap of faith. Go and look at the images yourself. Everything that we have presented. If I see Photoshop one more time, I'm just going to get angry. There is no Photoshop involved. There's nothing involved. It's a straight file. This weekend and going into next week, big media going on this. We've been contacted, so we are talking. So everything is going to go out there. Right now, everybody wants to question it because it's not big media. It's not MSM. It's not mainstream media. Well, there you go. All right? And I can't, it's frustrating for me. I have seen so many other people over the years go through what we're going through now. It's just straight files. Before you criticize or say anything, go and look for yourself. All right? With that, I'm going to roll the music. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you, everybody, for putting up with everything tonight. This is live radio, and technical glitches will happen and do happen. All right? Stay tuned. Coming up next, Big Picture Science, followed by After Dark with Brian Alvarez. Like I said, thank you, Courtney Brown, for coming in tonight. Next week, Dr. Stephen Greer, Alejandro Rojas, and Joe Buckman. Special thanks to Keith Rowland keeping it together tonight. Special thanks to Rita and everybody else. Art Bell. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm and Mark D. Kovar. The announcers are Steve Harder and Mark D. Kovar. Music is this guy. That's Doug Aldrich, his album Electrovision. You can't afford it. It's import only. Show intro is performed by Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Dark Matter Radio Network. Everybody, have a great weekend. I'll see you next week. See ya.